Hello, my name is Salman Hamid, and I'm Assistant Professor of Integrated Science and Humanities at Hampshire College.
I'm Kevin Anderson. I teach courses in film and anthropology at the University of Massachusetts, and this is Film Autopsy. Hello and welcome to a film autopsy of Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, new film based on the Jean le Carre novel directed by Swedish director Thomas Alfredson, who had previously done Let the Right One In, a film that we were both the big fans of. This is an I was almost about to say it's an updating, but it's a retelling of Jean le Carre's novel and, of course, the Alec Guinness movies and TV series, Smiley's People and Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy from the 70s. So it's set during the Cold War, 1973, and it's a really, in an interesting way, it is paced a lot like a film from the 70s. It looks a lot like a film from the 70s, a lot of gray, kind of drab set design and costuming, really bad haircuts, things like that. And so one of the things I'm curious about in terms of your take on it, does a film like that, does it benefit by not updating it to a modern context, or is it really a better film because it's remaining true to the novel in terms of the setting that it's a Cold War between Soviets and the West and again, all the bad haircuts?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a nostalgia right now for the Cold War when the enemy was much more clear. So in that sense, I mean, we are seeing some of these movies coming out which actually are set up with the Cold War, where we know in some sense the genre is well set also. Like, here's KGB, here's MI6, here's CIA. We know the key protagonists in that sense from those institutions. So I think it harps back to those early 70s films. I think that is a good strategy. I actually think if they were to update it, I think it would have been a very different film because it has a particular feel to it.
It would have had to have been a very different film. Like there's a scene near the end, this doesn't give too much away, where Smiley has finally cornered and figured out who this mole is in MI6, and he's just sitting there with a pistol. I mean, in a modern retelling of that, there'd be like 50, SWAT team members there. So there's something really beautiful about that era, I guess, to some extent, and also that reliance on kind of analog data and information. And in this film, it's so much about, and I think it's important for that era, of who can you trust and how far can you trust them and who can you manipulate and how far can you manipulate them. It's not about, necessarily hiding data or strategic weapons and things like that. It's really a much more interpersonal form of espionage and warfare. And I found that, quite refreshing to see in a film that's being done today.
And also, no cars, big car chases, explosions, and things like that. So it's like the conversation,
Coppola's
conversation, with Gene Hackman. I mean, in some sense, it's about the more details in the story rather than fancy. The camera work I think is very good. Cinematography is actually excellent in that because it creates a fantastic mood and atmosphere. Again, very specific to the time. It actually does a fantastic job of that. And by the way, don't get thrown off by Smiley because he doesn't smile. I don't think he smiled in the entire film.
I think it's a rather ironic name for our main character. Also played very well by Gary Oldman. And again, there's so many good people in the film. John Hurt, Kieran Hines, Colin Firth, Tom Hardy, and Mark Strong, who he almost always gets cast as a bad guy. I'm not sure if he's a bad guy in this film or not. I think the jury's out.
I don't think he's a bad guy, but I'm not trying to give it away. But what's wrong with that?
Strong.
Mark Strong is excellent. He has been in a couple of...
you've seen him in a lot of films. There's Sherlock Holmes, the first one. He was in Young Victoria, sorry.
But I want to ask, sort of like, here's another question, but did you like the film?
I did. I liked the film a lot for what it was trying to do and mostly for what it does achieve. One thing I will say, though, is that I did feel that some of the editing, and I don't mean in like a technical way, but like they jump around in time and space quite a bit, and that does keep us on our toes. I thought there was maybe a little too much of that. I thought the story was intriguing enough and confusing enough that I was already, really trying to pay attention to what was happening on the screen, and then throwing in these, I would call it, in a sense, kind of thematic jump cuts. It just was a little unnecessary.
Well, I liked the film, but I don't know if I loved it. And here is the reason. I was getting into this more metaphysical sort of like thinking in the sense that why do we like these films? Because it is a thriller. And there are a lot
it's a mystery.
It's a mystery. There are a lot of puzzles in it. So it was like, I was never big on sort of like, putting those puzzles, jigsaw puzzles together because I got bored. Like, like,
okay,
well, why don't we
just go
get
play with my cars?
Exactly. So this is the perfect kind of a film which has all these pieces, puzzles that you have to put in.
Yes.
Now you know that this film is honest because however it might close in, it would have sort of like, it would have all the consistency in there. But we don't know where the movie is going because that is the choice of the screenplay and of the director.
Right.
And yet we are intrigued by it of whether we can figure it out or not.
Right.
Now, and that's where the tricky thing comes in.
And are there little clues being dropped? Because you can go back and watch something like The Usual Suspects or other kind of mysteries, and you'd be like, oh, that little line of dialogue, that has some double meaning, or that car that drives away in the edge of the frame, that has meaning. In this, I don't necessarily think Alfredson is dropping a lot of hints.
And the other thing in this film was the fact that, I liked the fact that we didn't know where the movie was going, but at the same time, I don't think that there was any way of knowing because the director made sure.
If you had read the novel.
If you, well, that is the only way. And so in some sense, it is interesting from that perspective that you get into it. And I think, and you had mentioned The Usual Suspects from that perspective. Yeah, it's very interesting to watch it, but I think there is no way of figuring it out while you are watching it. It's very deliberate in that sense.
Right. And another film that we had seen this past year that this one reminded me of to some extent was The Ides of March, and particularly about the role of women in these two films. And in this one, in Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy, the women, whether it's a Russian agent or an English agent or the wife of an English agent or whatnot, the women in these films have no real agency, yet they're part of this fight too, whether they're fighting for Mother Russia or for the West, and yet very often they're disregarded by their male superiors or they're sacrificed by their male superiors. So I think that's another way in which keeping this as a retelling of the story, but keeping it in 1973. Remains quite genuine in terms of this commentary on gender relations, and that women at that particular time in the early 70s in the Cold War did not hold significant positions of power.
And people used to be serious around that time. They never smiled. So I think there are a bunch of things that actually work well.
There could have been more smoking in this film. Now I think there was plenty of drinking.
There was plenty of smoking. Don't you think it was sort of like?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
So see this film if you are interested in puzzles, if you are interested in not finding out how the movie turns out.
70s haircuts. And a really interesting performance by Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman is always fantastic.
Yeah. And you look at him in The Fifth Element, and he's just completely out of the box.
Yeah.
And then in this, he's very withdrawn.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. I actually like him way back over there.
It's true. And The Professional. He's such a great actor, and it's excellent. Great to see him doing a role like this, where it's again something you mentioned about another film we had autopsied before. It's in the eyes.
Yeah.
It's in the eyes.
So go and watch it.
With your own eyes.
It's a pretty good film.
Midnight, where the stars and you